Hello and welcome to today's Forrester webinar, B2B Marketing Measurement, How to Graduate from Reporting Outputs to Impacting Outcomes, with Laura Ramos, Laura Patterson, and Julie Schwarz. At Forrester's request, this call is being recorded. The content of this webinar is copyrighted material of Forrester Research Incorporated. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or unauthorized duplication of the event or materials relating to this event is prohibited. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. A brief question-and-answer session will follow the formal presentation. If anyone should require operator assistance during the webinar, please press *0 on your telephone keypad. It is now my pleasure to introduce your host, Laura Ramos. Thank you. You may now begin.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is Laura Ramos, and I have two special guests with us today. Before I get started, though, I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about what we call marketing performance management. And I have to say, you know, when it comes to measuring performance, I think marketers everywhere get a bum rap. You know, ever since John Wanamaker coined his famous observation about half the money I spent on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I can't tell which half. Marketing's kind of been seen as that department where it's really difficult to make that direct connection between what they do and the impact that it has on, you know, the business. So when CMOs connect the dots between marketing performance and business outcomes, is it really like they're performing some sort of magic trick? And I'd have to say, luckily today, the answer is no. To understand how far marketing has progressed from John Wanamaker's days to this ability that they have from moving from, you know, magic to meaningful metrics, Forrester Research decided to team up with our two partners on the phone today, VisionEdge Marketing and ITSMA, to look at what marketing leaders are, you know, challenged with. What are the challenges that they face in demonstrating their impact to the business? And in doing this survey, we found that the most successful marketing leaders are those who use marketing analytics and dashboards to connect marketing metrics to the cross-functional outcomes, to increase their decision-making ability, and to show business peers where exactly the company and marketing is heading along with it. So, hello everyone. I'm Laura Ramos, and I'm your hostess today on the Forrester side. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to quickly introduce my two colleagues for today's webinar. First of all, if you'd say hello, this is Laura Patterson. She's the president of VisionEdge Marketing. Laura has been in the space of marketing performance management for many years, and with VisionEdge Marketing, a company that she founded specifically for over 15. I've had an exceptional time working with her and learning from her vast amounts of experience on what does it take to move from sort of reporting outcomes to or reporting outputs to measuring outcomes. Laura, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. And Laura, thanks for having us be a part of today's program.
Yeah, thank you. And then last but certainly not least is Julie Schwarz, and she's Senior Vice President, Research and Thought Leadership at ITSMA. The IT Services Marketing Association is just a great organization. I've known them for a number of years. I met them before when I was working at Forrester and then continued to work with them while I was at Xerox. And then I'm just so pleased to be working with them again as I've boomeranged back. So Julie, would you like to say hello as well?
Absolutely, Laura. Thanks so much. It's great to be here, and I look forward to speaking with everybody.
So now that you've heard all three of our voices, I wanted to just kind of take you quickly through the agenda here. I'm going to start out by taking a look at why managing marketing performance is important, and then take you through some of the results from our joint survey. And then Laura's going to come in and talk about, you know, based on her experience, how real marketing leaders shift from reporting outputs to impacting outcomes. And then Julie's going to share with us a great example from CSC to show us exactly how they're doing this, with lots of in-depth looks at their dashboard and reporting capability. So let's start talking about, you know, what's sort of the issues around managing marketing performance. Why does measurement matter, in other words? This comes from research that Forrester did earlier this year with the Business Marketing Association. And we surveyed 117 B2B marketing executives, half of which were at the CMO level and the other half were at senior vice president, director level and above. Half were companies over 5,000 and half roughly were under 5,000. So it was a really nice mix, and we think it's fairly representative of what's going on in the marketplace. And what we were really looking at here is what's happening at the executive level, what's happening with the responsibilities that marketing is seeing inside of the organization. And it was really just some very good news for business-to-business marketers. 78%, more than three-quarters, said that they felt their marketing organization's influence on corporate strategy was much greater today than it had been 2 years ago, and that their leadership team is really judging the marketing's initiatives and successes much faster than before. So this is all good news. Marketing is under, has gotten more executive attention. It's not just seen as sort of the make it pretty department. However, there's a real change in the pace of technology evolution and what is expected out of marketing. And that pace of change really sort of heightens the challenge that CMOs and top marketing leadership face when it comes to understanding marketing's impact on the business. So from the same survey, 69% said that they felt that planning has become so much more challenging and because that pace of change is so much faster, and that the pace of change of technology and change in technology and in how marketing handles that technology will continue to accelerate. They don't see any sort of let up in the kinds of technologies that are coming into the market that marketers use. I mean, this is a stunning finding in terms of 96% of the people saying that this is what they feel like they're going through. So if things are changing this quickly, you have to kind of ask the question, is it even possible for marketers, particularly in B2B firms where sales cycles can be measured in months, to keep up with this pace and show how marketing turns the dials on the business before the next trend comes along? So to kind of get a handle on that question, Forrester decided to collaborate with the ITSMA and VisionEdge Marketing, who really amassed a great deal of credible experience on this topic. And we wanted to put our collective experiences and our heads together on this one. So what we did is that we went out and we asked marketing leaders, marketing people of all shapes and sizes, about the challenges that they face in using data, metrics, and analytics to improve marketing performance. And here's two of the outputs of that particular research: a report by Forrester published earlier this year, and then the joint presentation and report that came out in June that included all three of us. This survey generated over 400 responses, and on the Forrester research we culled that down to 174 because we wanted to look at mainly marketing leaders, not individual contributors. And so, that's the number we ended up with. They represent 10 different industries, including high tech, telecommunications, professional services, and some consumer goods. More than half of these respondents hold positions at companies with $1 billion or more in reported annual revenues. And this is fairly representative of the type of research that Laura has been doing here for 12 years. This is the 12th time that she's done this particular type of survey. And 2 years ago, ITSMA was involved, and then I was fortunate enough to bring Forrester into the mix this year. So, Laura, in doing this, what would you say was sort of the motivation behind this study? And could you give everyone just a little kind of background and history about how the findings have changed over the years?
Great. Thank you, Laura. And we have been just really blessed to work with these two partners on this research. So we started the study in 2001. When we formed the company, we were talking about data, analytics, metrics, and process, and it would be almost like talking to folks with deer in the headlights kind of gaze on their faces. Of course, today, you can't hardly have a conversation with a marketer without those words being a part of the vocabulary. But when we wanted to really understand where marketers, where organizations were in those areas, and what we learned early on is there were really only a very few number of marketers that were tackling it and doing it well. And what we wanted to understand is how that was changing, if it was changing, over time. And what were the areas of focus, and what the marketers who were doing it really well, what were they doing better and differently in these areas than their peers. And the sample, the types of participants in the study have been very consistent over the last 12 years in terms of types of industries, participants, titles, and size of company. The great thing about the survey in terms of its change is that it's gotten more and more global. We've been able to access and reach out to marketers and members of the C-suite outside just of North America. So it's been interesting to be able to look at that, and we have found that there's been very few changes or differences on geography or size of business. So it's going to be fun to talk about what these marketers that are doing well are doing better and differently.
Great. So I think one of the things that we found in the 2013 study was that the marketers' capabilities for improving their performance management are getting better. So the question was, compared to last year, the marketing, how would you say that your marketing organization's ability to measure and report on the contributions of its programs to the business has what? Gotten better, improved, gotten worse, that sort of thing. And 61% said that it's improved, 37% stayed the same, and a very small percentage said that it has actually gotten worse. So I think this is, extremely good news. The other good news in the survey is that marketing is seeing that it is having an impact on the business. 86% said the link between marketing activities and business goals is very clear inside of their organization. Almost 3/4 said it was clear to their leadership how marketing impacts the business. And that 2/3 said that marketing has become good, is good at improving business performance measures. So I think this is a trend that Laura and Julie and I have now seen kind of going up over the years, is that marketing's ability to measure its impact has gotten better over time, and this is what the survey results have reported as well. In addition to this, when it comes to things like using data and analytics and showing marketing's financial value to the business, still great results, but still room to improve. So if you kind of look over these numbers, there's sort of this enthusiasm and belief that marketing is getting better at it. When you start to press them on, well, how exactly do you do this? What's the kind of data and analytics that you use? You start to see that it's not quite where it needs to be yet. And then, unfortunately, we start to see a couple of other things show through the chinks in the armor. And there are some areas where marketing measurement and performance management still fails to kind of show those important links to the business results. So despite this good progress that we saw in the results, there's some performance management challenges that still persist. Not surprisingly, the #1 thing on the list is around data quality, and 33% said that's a real big challenge. And these were the people that responded 8, 9, and 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 was a major challenge. Having accurate data, access to data, these are the kinds of things that are the most challenging in reporting marketing's impact to the business. Processes being second, and skill set, know-how. It's not so much the tools as much as it is the data and the process, which we find is fascinating in terms of where marketing's progress is being made. And it's showing the need to further automate a lot of the marketing processes and capabilities to be able to deliver on that performance demonstration that we all need to do. Now, if we look at exactly what is it that marketing is measuring, it's pretty good at measuring its activities, the kinds of things that it does. So here's a stack ranking based on what our respondents said that they are currently doing in terms of the kinds of, to what extent they use data and analytics to do things like measure and report on marketing's performance. So measuring and reporting, everybody's sort of doing a real good job at measuring and reporting their performance and helping to justify the marketing budget. Where things start to slide off are, things like determining market sentiment, brand strength. Brand strength is always one of those things where you've got to kind of go out and do research to figure out where you are, especially against the competition. And in, doing things like testing value propositions and messaging. But still, pretty good numbers and pretty good plans to continue to do these kinds of things going forward. What's interesting is when we started to ask about metrics that really had a bigger tie to the business, to what sort of the CEO or CFO, for example, would care about. This is where we started to see fewer and fewer marketers claiming to be able to use data and analytics to do these kinds of things. So in particular, we thought it was particularly disconcerting to see, like only a quarter or less were using data and analytics to increase their cross-sell and upsell, predict customer buying behavior, analyze purchase patterns, to prioritize or time the delivery of certain offers, and then finally, but most importantly, calculate customer lifetime value. These are the kinds of things that really sort of have a bigger impact on the revenue growth margin of the business. And then probably the most stunning finding in the whole the survey was that these marketers who are saying they're doing a better job at managing their performance, they're adopting technologies, they're measuring more things than they have before. When you ask them, so to what extent do your key stakeholders, your executive peers, use all this stuff that you're producing to make decisions? The thing that came back was that if you look at the bottom, there were very few of the marketers who could put their hand on their hearts and say their executive team is taking advantage of this. I mean, just 40% of the marketers today believe that measuring marketing's value and contribution to the business is very important and critical. And we thought that was an interesting finding as well. And it's that finding that may explain what's happening at the bottom of this chart here, where only 8% of the marketers surveyed said that their CEOs use their data to make decisions. And what's worse, that same set of marketers said that just 4% of CFOs use the marketing data. These two findings may help explain why marketing budgets continue to hover around sort of 2 to 3% of revenues that we've been seeing in our budget surveys, despite what we think are some really great advances in technology, process improvements, and a greatly expanded marketing mix, especially if you look at the digital side. However, this is not surprising since, as we showed on the two prior slides, marketers tend to cling to some operational metrics like email responses and web traffic instead of showing how marketing moves the needle on top-line growth or profitability. So what I'm going to do at this point is to turn things over to Laura. Because what we had to ask at this point in the survey is, how do marketing executives find a way out of this trap of reporting outcomes and get into a place at the executive table where they can really talk about impacting the business? So, Laura, I'm going to turn this over to you. And I'd like to invite you to kind of share some of the insights that you've gained in solving these kinds of problems during the past 15 years at VisionEdge Marketing with the executives and marketing leaders who want to better manage their performance. Laura?
Thank you, Laura. And that was a great overview. So I'm really excited to talk about what these best-in-class marketers are doing better and differently. And I invite you all to put some questions out there to us to address when we come to the close of today's discussion. And I'm having trouble going. There we go. So I want us to try to imagine what marketing performance management and measurement enables us to do as marketers. First and foremost, to Laura's comment, it increases our relevance to the C-suite. I mean, this is a critical thing for all of us in marketing to be able to do. If our goal is to find, keep, and grow the value of customers, and customers are the lifeline to a company, then what we do should be relevant to the C-suite. It allows us to continue to make improvements, to create the opportunity to know what is and isn't working, to be able to facilitate strategic decisions and important investment decisions. And it lastly enables us to create marketing as a center of excellence. To be more relevant to the business, we really need to know how to measure, what to measure, and then, as we've been talking about, communicate that value and how do we communicate our impact and our contribution to the organization. And this is where dashboards, as we were talking about earlier, become critical, and what Julie's going to be sharing with us at the close. I do want to go back to the conversation about what best-in-class marketers are doing better and differently. And we've been looking at this, as you know now, for 12 years. And what we've tried to understand is, what is this group, this unique group doing? And they are doing something different from the rest of the pack. And what we have found is that what they're doing differently continues to expand. So when we first looked at this area and we wanted to understand how those marketers were being able to show and demonstrate their contribution, what were they doing better and differently, the very first thing that we learned is alignment. They were able to create sort of a direct linkage or direct line of sight between business, marketing activities and investments and business results. Whether they're using a particular methodology like ours or another organization's, or they've come up with their own, this is a paramount part of what they do and how they work. As time went on and they got more proficient, the second thing they became very competent at was accountability. And this is the ability to set the right metrics, understand how those metrics work and play with each other, and then be able to report and communicate their contribution, whether that's in some valuable graphical dashboard fashion or some other way. The next area that we've seen over the last few years become an area of proficiency for these marketers is analytics, data and analytics. They're building their data and analytics arsenal, their data and analytics muscle, whether that's within their own teams or they're bringing it in from folks within the organization, whether that's coming from other or parts of the organization that they're able to leverage, or they're using third parties. But they understand the value, and if they're going beyond what they can just get their hands on that's free, whether that's Google Analytics or something related to the website or other things like that that are operational or output-oriented, but looking at analytics and being able to build out models that will help them predict and anticipate their customers' behavior. The next area that has become clear that this group of marketers invests in is automation. And we're not talking about just marketing automation or CRM systems, but really automation as the infrastructure, the overarching infrastructure that enables them to operate with effectiveness and to run marketing like a business, and also to be able to make that transformation into a center of excellence. This includes the processes, the skills, the technology, and tools needed to facilitate the automation of marketing and the measurement of marketing. Alliances have become a critical part of how these best-in-class marketers succeed. They are not trying to go it alone. They have recognized that they need very strong formal alliances and partnerships, particularly with sales, finance, and IT. So those three functions within the organization are actually partners, very close partners of these marketers. And lastly, this group of marketers, they are obsessed and passionate about performance measurement and management. So they're constantly checking in, benchmarking themselves with others they feel that are best in class. They are conducting audits. They are assessing their own team skills, adding skills where they need to, closing gaps. So this is an area that this group continues to excel in, and we'll talk more about that shortly. So these are the 6 key things.
Hey, Laura, I'm sorry to interrupt. Before you move on, of those 6, so this is what the leaders, right, do. They have a game plan. These are the 6 A's that they sort of follow. Do you find that folks that aren't in sort of that leadership category yet, is there one of these that they struggle with more particularly than the others?
That's a great question, Laura. what we have found in our research, and I think Julie will talk a little bit more about this potentially, that there is statistical significance around the alignment A. That this is a key area where most marketers struggle, and we're in the thick of 2014 planning for many companies. You're probably seeing that as well. And one of the things that we often see are PowerPoints or Microsoft Word documents or even Excel spreadsheets that pass off as marketing plans. What they really are budgets, right? There are a list of things that companies are going to do in their marketing. There's a list of activities, when they're going to do them, and how many they're going to do, and how much they're going to spend. That's really not a marketing plan, and that marketing plan is not typically synced or lined up with business outcomes. And so this group of marketers, they approach their planning very differently, and they are looking at it from the perspective of how do I set my plan up so that I understand the needles I need to move and what I'm going to have to do as an organization to impact those needles, and how will that success be measured. So they're very clear about those 3 steps, and they're able to visualize, graphically visualize that in a unique way to their leadership team. So they're moving away from a cost accounting approach, but to a more outcome-based budgeting approach, and that makes a significant change in the conversations they have with their leadership team. I hope that answered the question.
It does. Go ahead. Yep. Great. Thank you.
It was a great question. And since so many folks probably listening to us today are in their planning, I hope that they took that away as something they might want to consider. So how do they do it? Well, to Laura's point and question, the very first thing they do is tackle alignment. So if you don't have alignment of your marketing activities and investments up against business outcomes, then that's the very first thing to address. Now, everyone probably listening is going to say, but we do that. I mean, we know we have objectives in our marketing plan, and we understand what the company's revenue targets are, but usually they're very broad, they're not quantified, and the clarity between the business outcome and the marketing objective is very loose or very fuzzy. So these folks, it's not fuzzy for them. This is the very first thing they do. They change their conversation from activities and outputs to outcomes. So just recently, I had a conversation with a company. They're putting together a key marketing plan, of course, for next year. They're a very, very successful company, and they've done quite well, technology company. When they talk about their marketing, they're still talking about X number of email campaigns or X number of webinars or X number of events or X number of press releases. And at the most, they're done talking about, some amount of coverage, some number of maybe fans and followers or visitors, some number of open rates or click-through rates, those kinds of things, some number of registrants. But that's, again, at the activity output level, which we need, but what they haven't been able to do is translate that into how it's an outcome. What is the outcome it's producing for the organization that will turn that needle? So what is it in terms of new customers, growth with expansion or growth within existing customers, retention of existing customers, those kinds of outputs in terms of market share growth, lifetime value improvements, things that the C-suite is paying attention to. So when I first began in my career, one of my key mentors said, in marketing, I really need to know and expect you to do 3 things. Acquire more of something faster, less expensively than if I allocated the money somewhere else. So at the very minimum, we should be able to answer those questions. More of something, more customers, more business with existing customers, faster, some kind of speed associated with that, and then, of course, cost. So at the very minimum, these folks are answering those 3 questions for their leadership team in the context of an outcome, not in the context of an output. They are building data and analytical muscle. They're adding that as fast as they can, that capability, whether that's directly within their organization or through some indirect relationships or through their relationships with partners. There are 4 things they are tackling as they go forward into 2014 that we're seeing a lot. First, they're getting clarity around the data chains because they are beginning to, your point, Laura, address data quality and their access to data. They also understand that they need to have a data chain for their metrics. And this is a very important concept because it leads to the formation of the dashboard. They have clarity around their data, what is in their inventory. You know, what is the data? Where does it come from? How is it sourced? How frequently is it updated? Who updates it? Who has access to it? Those kinds of questions, they have an understanding of that. And they're learning how to get more access to data beyond what they can get inside a marketing automation or CRM system. They have a metrics catalog for their measures so that they're again, have an understanding of what are their metrics, what's the hierarchy of those metrics, how are they calculated, how are they measured, how are they reported, and when, and then building out models. They're beginning to create models, whether all the way from simple models, whether those are segmentation models or campaign lift models, to more elaborate models around customer risk models, predisposition to purchase models, those kinds of things. They are moving from data to insights, so it kind of relates to the prior point in the sense that once you get this sort of data analytical muscle and this kind of data access, now you can begin to have a process of how do you take this data and turn it into something actionable? How do you use the skills and the tools to find the patterns that will give you insights and that you can then make decisions from so that you can make choices about what you want to do and where you want to invest, whether those are insights into customers or insights into markets or the competition. So it helps you become, instead of just being knowledgeable, but actually now to being able to be, have wisdom about your market. Lastly, and to the point made earlier, these folks are working very hard at creating actionable marketing dashboards. So you can see in this illustration that there is a data chain, and you can see that these metrics are designed to help understand what is and isn't moving the needle so that the organization can make smarter decisions about their investments and their programs. So should we continue doing something or not? Should we add more money to something or not? Those kinds of questions. So it's really these capabilities, these proficiencies are really the only way to answer important and burning questions. So when whether you're in the break room or the boardroom, the C-suite wants to know, what is marketing doing and how can marketing prove that it's affecting share price, revenue, market share, customer value. So with that, I want to say thank you and turn the conversation over to Julie, who is going to share with us some of the key things that a company is doing and how they're framing up their dashboard.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Well, this is Julie, and as Laura and Laura have so eloquently explained, marketing departments are under pressure to prove the value that they bring to the organization. So when an executive asks, what's marketing's impact on the business, marketers want to have more than just anecdotal stories. They want data, and they want data that tells a story. And ideally, they want a dashboard to do this. But it's not as easy as it says. Not every company has a dashboard. A lot of times what they have are glorified spreadsheets or PowerPoint summary reports. And the reason they don't all have these dashboards, even though data is everywhere, I think Laura Patterson just gave us some insights into why. It's because it's hard to do. There's a lot of things that you have to do, steps along the way to get there. Collecting the data is a challenge. Knowing what data you have is a challenge. And then integrating that data is even more of a challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a story about CSC. They are a company that did successfully create a dashboard and have been able to link or really tie their marketing activity to business results. So what has CSC done to make this shift from reporting outputs to impacting business incomes? Well, the first thing I'll say that they did, which isn't even on the slide, is that the marketing organization was given a budget, and they were given headcount, and they had a senior management mandate to build a best practice model. So, definitely part of the equation. Senior management was looking for them to get this done and cleared the way to make it possible. But you'll see it still takes a lot more than budget and headcount to do what CSC has done. So let's look in detail at what they did. Well, the first thing they did is they put sales and marketing under the same roof. This gets back to the alignment and also the alliances that Laura Patterson just talked about. So they have sales and marketing reporting to the same leader. They're on the same team. So it was a process from establishing initial definitions all the way through the implementation and rollout. So what you see in their marketing dashboard that they created is that there's a seamless linkage between sales and marketing. The second thing they did is they started with a plan. They took 4 to 5 months to decide on and define their KPIs. So only after the plan was fully fleshed out did they start looking at specialized software tools. And the other thing I liked about them is they got help. They didn't let their hubris stand in their way. Yeah, they're a software company, they're a consultant. They probably could have developed this in-house, developed a proprietary system that did exactly what they wanted the system to do. And a lot of companies do go that route. But CSC realized this was not their area of expertise, so they got help. They went to a consultant. And it turned out to be a good plan because they got there, once they had the plan in place, the actual technology piece took just about 3 months for them to get it up and running. Now, they also focused on the key performance indicators, the KPIs that their senior leadership cared most about, and then they measured what mattered, not just what was easy, and they created the digital infrastructure. So the digital infrastructure did not come first. First came the KPIs and the plans, then came the tools. And we'll talk a bit more about that. And finally, their marketing dashboard was designed to be used daily. It's updated daily. And in order to get it to be used daily, it needed to be intuitive and visually pleasing and consumable, by people, as you know, who have very short attention spans. So here's where the art of marketing is just as important as the science. Marketers at CSC put their design skills to work, creating a dashboard that not only had important and useful information, but looked good and reflected the CSC brand. So let's talk about their integrated digital infrastructure. This is really the nerve center of what they did. And according to Nick Panay, who is the CSC Director of Global Brand and Digital Marketing, the most difficult part of this initiative was not the dashboard itself. It was collecting all the underlying elements, collecting all the data. So if you looked at CSC a year and a half ago, you'd see a company that was caught in a 1990s time warp. They had no digital marketing or sales infrastructure to speak of. You fast forward to today, and you see a very different picture. The company has a new website. They've got a marketing automation platform. They have a content management platform. They've implemented Salesforce.com, and they have numerous analytical tools. Over 45 different systems like Eloqua, Salesforce, Catalyst, Omniture, Adobe system, all of the kinds of Adobe Social and other types of systems. And the remarkable thing about these systems is that they're all integrated. In 1 year, the company has built a true digital infrastructure. And without this infrastructure, there'd be no dashboard. So what Nick told me is that the dashboard is nothing more than the cherry on top.
Hey, Julie, before you move on,
yep.
This is wonderful. Did CSC, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, correct? Several multi-billions?
Yes, I think 16 billion.
Yeah, okay. Did they give you a sense of kind of like rough ballpark with the kind of budget that they put towards doing this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I believe, and you cannot directly quote me on this, but I believe they had about $6 million to do this.
Okay.
So they were given budget and account.
Yeah, between 5 and 10 for a $16 billion company to pull this off. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. And if you remember, they had this executive mandate, so they had the full support of the executive team. And as part of that, they knew exactly what their executives wanted them to focus on. So marketing's mandate at CSC is lead generation that results in closed business with new accounts and their existing client base. That's what is most important to senior management at CSC. So the KPIs that CSC senior leadership cares about most are therefore the total contract value, the marketing qualified leads, marketing source pipeline, and the marketing assisted pipeline. And in the executive overview of the dashboard, that's exactly what the executives see. Very quick, very easy. But there's also drill down.
Hang on, Julie, just a second. The previous slide. So there are actual numbers that show up in those gray areas. We're just blocking them out because that's confidential private information.
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
Great.
So the numbers would actually be there. And where you do see numbers on these slides, it's all dummy data. We don't actually have, we have the screenshots, but not the actual real data from CSC. So no competitive intelligence here on these slides. So if you looked at the drill down, that's really the power behind the CSC infrastructure. It's this integrated digital ecosystem that enables tiered data. So everything brilliantly rolls up into that one number, the total contract value that the executives are most interested in. And from that number, users can click through to find the detail. They actually can find the name and contact of every lead, where he or she is in the buying process, the assets viewed on the website, events attended, response to campaign calls of action, all those types of things. So when they say, for example, this month marketing sourced 58 leads for you, sales department, and the salespeople say, no way, you didn't do that. Well, then they can actually click through and show the names of those 58 leads. And so it's really hard for the salespeople to argue with that kind of information. In other views, the user of the dashboard can actually dissect individual campaigns, look at the sales pipeline, analyze content quality based on usage, or determine the contribution of things like social media versus live events. So a lot of drill down detail there. Updated daily. Now, CSC actually went even a step further because they're not just measuring and reporting what's easy. They're not tracking all activity. They're measuring what matters. They're measuring only the things that are impacting that top KPI of the executives, the total contract value. So let me give you an example. You know, some web content types are recognized because they've built models and looked at patterns. So CSC knows based on this data that there are some content types that tie more directly to buying intent than others. And based on that, they can actually look at the content usage and further refine their predictive models. The definition of marketing influence leads excludes web visits if the visitor doesn't meet a specified level of engagement. And that engagement has to be with what they've identified to be the critical content. And the dashboard also distinguishes between
So hang on, Julie. How do they think about engagement? Like amount of time that somebody spends with the content, how much whether they click on it, whether they take an action after they click? Is it these kinds of things?
Yep, it's all of the above. So they're looking at that, and they're also looking at the different variables because they have such rich data now. They can look at that and look for patterns and build even more refined models in terms of their predictive capability to say, this is, you know, it's like that story was a Target that could tell when a young girl was pregnant before she'd even mentioned it to anybody. That's what they're able to do by looking at that kind of digital behavior. they can say, this person hasn't raised their hand as a lead, but we can tell based on their digital body language that they are going to be a lead. And they're refining those models based on all those different things. So they also distinguish between valued visits. So those are the people that they know will actually turn into leads versus perhaps a college student who's looking for a job. So they're not reporting all activity. They're only reporting the activity that's going to lead to total contract value. The other thing that I think is very cool is that at CSE they do account-based marketing, and they've identified about 250 accounts that are in this account-based marketing program, and those are their most strategic key accounts. And they actually track the metrics for the employees at those accounts separately, so that they have a specific drill down in the dashboards just for those accounts that are in their account-based marketing program. So again, measuring what matters and not just what's easy. And I've already been talking about how they've been using the data in their dashboard to build predictive models as well as report past history. So the dashboard really tells two simultaneous stories. It's telling senior leadership how marketing is impacting the business. That's that roll up to the total contract value. But it's also telling the marketers how they can improve marketing to increase their impact on the business. And so through the predictive models, they're able to increase their impact. And although if you talk to CSE, they'll tell you in this area they're just getting started. They've only scratched the surface, and they really believe that this is the next proving ground for marketing. So this is where they're taking the dashboard next. So what CSE has done it's not easy, and they've learned many hard lessons along the way. But the real secret to their success in making that shift from reporting activity to really impacting business outcomes is not the technology they used. I can't say that enough. It doesn't start with the technology. Technology is really important, but it's not the secret to success. In talking with them, what I see is the secret to their success are these four things. The first is they established a common vocabulary. That way sales ops, corporate marketing, field marketing, marketing ops, and IT and finance and the CEO were all speaking the same language. And the second thing they did is they over-communicated at all levels in the organization. Education was critical. This was new. They'd never had it before. And they needed to make sure that everyone was up to speed on new processes and new systems, and that no one was going off the reservation. This was a previously very decentralized marketing organization, and they have since, as concurrent with building this integrated infrastructure and dashboard, have centralized marketing, and they have to make sure that no one is going off and doing their own thing. So they had to go to the far corners of the globe with a roadshow and make sure they had everyone on the same page. But they also had to educate their senior executives. Access to these metrics is new to these executives, and the senior leadership needed to be educated to see the marketing trends and how the metrics could be used as leading indicators for the business. Now, the other thing is I saw that CSE has really approached this as an iterative process. So they took the time to plan the dashboard, define all the KPIs before they implemented any kind of software, but they had to keep the plan flexible so that they could accommodate changing needs, as well as feedback and critiques from sales, the marketing leaders, and the senior executives. So this is a work in process. It's never done. The other thing I thought was really interesting in what they did, all their tools are cloud-based, and they're all plug and play. They didn't go to one vendor, and they didn't look for one vendor to provide it all. They're definitely taking a best-of-breed approach in building this dashboard, and one of the reasons they did that is because the technology, as Laura Ramos, you were saying, changes so fast. They wanted to be able to swap things out all the time so that they weren't locked into any kind of infrastructure. So it's an iterative process. And finally, CSE learned that you have to hire the smartest people you can find. So you definitely need a senior marketer and a sales leader that have the vision and the capability of building the business case, getting the headcount, getting the funding, and they have to have the passion to actually sell it to the whole organization. And then lower down, you need project leader that can marry that art of marketing. You know, we talked about how the dashboard had to be visually pleasing, easy to use, consumable, reflect the CSC brand with all the science behind it, right? And supporting these people, you need the technology, you need the business processes, and you need the demand generation campaign gurus. So what CSC has done is, you know, we think is really exciting. They're not done yet. They're still learning, they're still evolving, but we can see that they're leveraging marketing data and analytics to create a marketing plan that Laura talked about that ties directly to the business outcomes, to the revenue. And it took a lot more than marketing automation technology to do this. And so they did all the things that Laura Patterson talked about. They tackled the alignment. They changed the conversation. They built the data and the analytics muscle. And finally, they built an actionable dashboard supported by tools, processes, and skills. And that's how they made this shift. And I'll turn that over to you, Laura Ramos.
Well, thank you. Julie, that was great. And I think, you know, that those details really help to show how CSC is just one marketing organization, is really graduating from, you know, reporting marketing outputs to really impacting the business outcomes. And they've shifted, if we think back to the beginning of our presentation, from that, you know, anecdotal stories and prestidigitation into becoming what I would call the control center, what Laura referred to as the center of excellence, that helps the rest of the business really understand how marketing, in doing what it does, communicating the brand, message, and content to prospects and customers, helps to move the needle on opportunity pipeline, revenues, and real business results. So to help everyone kind of, you know, think about what it is that we've gone through today in looking at sort of the findings from the research and what the best marketers do, and in the case example from CSC is there's 4 key recommendations, pieces of advice that I'd like to leave everyone with today. So as you think about 2014 and how you're going to revise your marketing performance management to really focus on the business impact, here's 4 things that we think you should do. So number 1, you know, B2B marketers have taken on a lot of responsibilities during the past 2 years that create more peer and boardroom attention, and that's a good thing. But to get crystal clear on the goals, you as marketing leaders need to be able to answer 3 questions with your executive team. Which business outcomes will these programs affect? How exactly will marketing affect the business? And how will we know that we've achieved those objectives after we look at the program's results? And it's answering these questions that's really going to keep marketing performance management focused on improving the value that it delivers, not just on, you know, improving it. Secondly, all marketers understand that the need to bring marketing budgets in line with revenue generation is a key driver behind the automation investment. I mean, that's certainly what caused CSC to spend the money that they did. And it's true that tracking the historical revenue impact of programs and campaigns and events helps marketing prioritize spending and account for results going forward. But you know, the key here is not to stop there. Don't just go beyond ROI, return on marketing investment, to really look at the full scope of your influence. Because we've seen that, you know, B2B CMOs who look beyond this to include factors like, you know, customer preference and loyalty, market share, brand sentiment, really do report on sort of the full impact of marketing on the direction and health of the business. Thirdly, we're seeing still in the data, and you know, there are very few companies like CSC who really understand how to measure customer impact of marketing over time, and fewer still that know how to measure customer profitability and translate these findings into models that predict which type of prospects are going to be those most likely to purchase and to produce greater value going forward. So we would advise everyone during the next, you know, 30 to 60 days to sit down with your sales and service counterparts and really think through the processes and tools that you need to put in place to keep your firm, to help your firm learn and evaluate what customers, what makes your customers valuable in the long run. And then finally, it's time to shine a light on existing customers. take a look at what happens in your buyer's journeys after the deal closes and decide which metrics there best determine their future success and retention. Then figure out how to focus some account-specific communications, the account-based marketing that Julie mentioned, to help these customers get through the onboarding process successfully, sharpen up their best practices, or learn about new products or services that you offer that they may not be taking advantage of. And it's that kind of activity that will help marketing demonstrate to the rest of the business the impact that you can have on things like renewals, share of wallet, and penetration. All right, so with that, I think we've reached the end of our prepared comments, so to speak, and I do think we have a couple of minutes for some questions. Could I bring the operator back on to poll and find out if we have any questions?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we'll be conducting a question and answer session. As a reminder, you'll be called upon by the PIN number you used to join this webinar. If you would like to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. A confirmation tone will indicate your line is in the question queue. You may press *2 if you would like to remove your question from the queue. For participants using speaker equipment, it may be necessary to pick up your handset before pressing the star keys. Our first question is from PIN number 30005. Please go ahead with your question. PIN 30005, your line is open for question.
What tool did you use to create the visualizations you showed in the presentation?
So are you referring to the CSC dashboard?
Yes. Yep.
I believe they used something called Good Data.
Okay.
Was the dashboard software that they used.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions on the phone?
There are no questions on the phone, but as a reminder, you may press *1 and you'll be called upon by the PIN number you used to join the webinar.
So while we're waiting for that, there's a couple of questions that have come in through chat. And Julie, another one for you for CSC. You talked about the importance of talent that they hired, and I thought that was interesting too. Like, how did they hire the best? Where did they find them? Are they millennials? What are the types? What's the profile of people that they're hiring there?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. It's interesting. I talked with them about this, and it's really clear that the people was probably the most important factor in this whole thing. That, you know, they just said the reason they could do this is because they hired really smart people. And not necessarily the millennials, who, you know, they're the digital natives, the people who didn't know a time when we didn't have this kind of technology. And you think those would be the real hotshots that would be able to do this. But what CSC found, it's more of the digital migrants. So it's I would say the people kind of like me who have learned the technology. They didn't grow up with it, but they've learned it and worked very hard to learn it. But what the digital migrants have that the digital natives don't have is really the business savvy and the business context, that they can look at the big picture. It's almost like they have the business savvy wrapped around that technology core. And that was really important in the people that have been able to do this, so that they are able to take what they understand about the business and apply the technology to it with that business context. So what they found that they were most successful with was a blend of the digital natives, those millennials, with the digital migrants, so that they could get that really deep business understanding and context, as well as being able to understand how to use the technology.
Yeah, that you don't get unless you've spent some time in business. So I'm showing this about, we're at the top of the hour, maybe a minute after. So I wanted to, first of all, ask everyone to please take our poll to let us know how to do, continue to provide good value through the webinars that Forrester offers. And I want to let everyone know that our contact information is on the last slide here, and you can certainly download it in the slides. And if you have any additional questions that you'd like to ask all three of us, please, feel free to direct those questions to us through email or join the conversation on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us today. Laura and Julie, thank you so much for being such great partners with Forrester on this and for spending your time, your valuable time with me today. Really appreciate working with both of you. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us again and look forward to the next time we can be together on Forrester webinar.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you for participating in today's webinar. For more information on upcoming events, please go to www.forrester.com. This concludes today's webinar.